Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone that's joined. Just to echo Mike's sentiments, thanks very much for joining us today. We're going to take you through a number of different areas where we look at sort of Microsoft 365 Copilot in action. So we're going to start with a sort of brief introduction into myself and Mike. Then Mike's going to take you through an overview of Microsoft 365 Copilot. We'll then jump into some live demos, so hopefully that all works out well, and the demo gods are with us today. We'll then go through some areas where we can help as a business in terms of driving the preparation enablement of Copilot within your businesses and your end customers' businesses. And then we'll hand back off into Mike to go through a more detailed technical exploration into how sort of Copilot's nuts and bolts all fit together, and then we'll close out with Q&A. So any sort of questions as we go through, feel free to raise them in the Q&A, and we'll look to address those sort of as we go through and towards the end of the session. Okay, so just to start with a sort of quick intro to myself. So I'm Alex Parkinson, Practice Manager for all things public cloud, where we look at the services portfolio. So my team's very much focused on supporting our partner base in delivering and executing for your end customers in a professional and managed services capacity. My role today is very much bringing Microsoft 365 Copilot to life in that demo form. So part of the original preview program, and I've had a Microsoft 365 Copilot license for a number of months now. So hopefully we can sort of bring that to life for you and sort of showcase the sort of best that it has to offer at this point in time. And with that, I'll hand over to Mike to do an intro, and then we'll get started.
Thanks, Alex. So as Alex has said, my name is Mike Markey. I'm one of the partner development managers at Ingram Micro, very much focused within the sales area, but one of three UK ambassadors for Copilot across the globe, sitting within the UK. So very honoured to be here on this session today. And with that, let's roll into the overview, Alex. So we're going to kick it off with an overview of Microsoft 365 Copilot. So it's a very exciting and new technology. But with that, we'll start with a short video.
Whoa. Straight to the top, never going down, don't wait for the drop. Still, that's the motto, yeah. Brand new bands for the auto, oh. Foot to the ground, full throttle. Big energy for the night like lotto. Y'all talk lots, never this quiet. Life like a Seinfeld plot. Vault full of songs, all of them bombs. Something like a minefield guy, boom. Get it, tickets running out quick. Bet it, never get it out big. Said it, never had to shout it. They said I couldn't ever do it, okay, how's it? Fit a week worth of work in a minute. Machine well oiled, you know how I stay efficient. To-do list written, I do this different. Hold up, wait a minute, I ain't finished. Okay. Look, flows the same now. Paved the way to snakes and fakes are chased out. Back to back. I changed the pace now. Had to stack the cash until the bank's out. Straight to the top, never going down, don't wait for the drop.
If that video didn't energize you for Copilot, I know it certainly did me, but it makes me very excited to speak about this technology today. So with that, Copilot for Microsoft 365 is integrated into your apps that you use every single day, freeing you to focus on the most important work and less on the busy work. It works alongside you. With that, Copilot for Microsoft 365 helps you to unleash creativity, unlock productivity, and up-level your skills. Copilot combines the power of large language models, which you might see on some of the slides as LLMs, with your data across the Microsoft Graph, with your calendar, emails, chats, documents, meetings, and more. And the Microsoft 365 apps to turn your words into the most powerful productivity tool on the planet. And it does so within our existing commitments to data security and privacy across the enterprise. So AI might not be as new as you'd first think. If we left the Terminator and iRobot movies, there were actually use cases for this technology before the likes of ChatGPT and Copilot existed. Before 2022, you might get a game of chess or Jeopardy out of it. We'd probably want to interact with chatbots for simple things like a menu selection. We would hear the likes of Amazon recommending new bits for our shopping basket, which often turned up at the door, to unknown to my knowledge sometimes. But with that, now from 2022 and onwards, and the acceleration of AI services, they've gone on to win things such as art and photography competitions against humans. They've been able to pass exams and even generate language at a university graduate level on almost any topic. Given the speed of these advancements, me personally, I'm very invested and interested into where this technology is going to take us, probably even before we get to 2030, to be honest. Now, the intensity of work and always on communications are outpacing our ability to keep up. Pace of work has increased exponentially, along with the crush of data, information, and always on communications. People are struggling to shoulder the weight of it all. And whilst business leaders feel the pressure to increase productivity amid economic uncertainty, AI is poised to create a whole new way of working. And for many, the platform shift to AI is already underway. Organizations that embrace AI will unleash creativity and unlock productivity for everyone, which is ushering in a new wave of productivity growth and value creation. So just how do you ensure that you're actually ready to join in the era of AI? It's not just a case of, you're there and get ready. There is a journey to it. And just as customers turn to Microsoft to help them make the shift to remote and flexible work, they're now turning to us to help them understand how this new era of AI will change work yet again. But getting there will require a plan. And we believe that within the Microsoft Cloud, this can help power your AI transformation. So let's take a little look at the vision we have to help you get ready. So today, the best way to get ready for Copilot is to get on Microsoft 365 if you're not already there. The essential foundation for modern work. Microsoft 365 brings together in a single solution the foundational capabilities required, including the identity, applications, management, and security, plus your enterprise data so that you can be AI ready. And with Microsoft 365, you can get ready for that new era of work through 3 simple stages. First one, Zero Trust Foundations, based on the verify explicitly, using the least privilege accesses and assume breach. Second one being streamline those endpoint management, so protect, manage, and support all endpoints and apps. And the third one, productivity and collaboration, connecting your people and unlocking new patterns of work. So if I pose a question towards yourselves who are listening today, have you ever thought that you might have a Zero Trust foundational strategy in place? If so, how would you potentially manage it? Or how do your application and device management solutions impact your IT administration and your end user experience? With that, a Zero Trust strategy may look complex if you think it's about the entire architecture. But the essence of this approach is simple: proactive, integrated security controls across your entire environment that follow 3 principles. Verifying explicitly, don't know what you don't know, and always making that security decisions using all available data points, including the identity, location, device, health, resource, data classification, and even the anomalies. The use of least privilege access, so limiting the access with just-in-time and conditional access policies. There's no standing privileges. The last one, assuming breach, minimizing blast radius with microsegmentation, end-to-end encryption, continuous monitoring, and automated threat detection and response. Now the solutions that enable Zero Trust Foundation within Microsoft 365 provide the approach to securing and managing those identities, defending against threats on multiple platforms, and also protecting sensitive information across the data estate. Now, if we switch to endpoint and management, just a few years ago, an endpoint was a desktop computer at work. Today, it might be the laptop, it might be the phone, or even a tablet, a printer, and also the devices in your meeting rooms. And it's likely that at least a portion of these devices are now personal ones. In fact, at least 50% of people use a personal device for work, and that's definitely accelerated since COVID and the bring your own device policies that many have employed. But it's likely that your IT pros are challenged with the task of managing all these various devices, plus the applications that run on them. With Microsoft 365, you can simply solve this challenge through a single solution, which provides visibility, recommendations, and the data that allows you to act. We've developed a simplified and streamlined framework for endpoint management that allows IT admins to, firstly, deliver the best experience with Windows 11. When the overall digital estate is made more secure for the organization, this delivers a better frictionless experience for employees. The second one is all around managing and protecting any endpoint from the cloud. The key benefits of streamlining endpoint management is improving your ability to protect, manage, and support all endpoints and apps. The third one, simplifying and optimizing the endpoint estate to improve IT efficiency. This solution benefits IT professionals because their endpoint management processes are simplified. But at Microsoft, it's kind of firmly believed that energized and empowered employees are the key to durable competitive advantage for every organization. But the people who worked for you 2.5 years ago, these have changed. Microsoft 365 enables all the ways people work today, getting people connected and working together through Microsoft Teams, enabling new patterns of work that allow users to co-author and co-edit content across their applications, engaging and empowering employees, and creating new ways to connect and learn. So with this, to pose a couple of other questions to yourselves, how would you say you'd manage employee productivity and collaboration today? Have you ever thought to consider AI to elevate it? Or have you begun to kind of identify the key roles or business functions or other critical areas that you'd maybe incorporate AI? So once you're using Microsoft 365 E3, for example, for security, endpoints, and productivity, you're ready for Copilot. Copilot for Microsoft 365 is your AI assistant at work. It builds on Copilot, but is in a class all on its own. It includes enterprise-grade security, privacy, compliance, and responsible AI to ensure all data processing happens inside the Microsoft 365 tenant, using technology Microsoft 365 customers have relied on for years. And the comprehensive approach, along with the fact that Copilot will work alongside a user, embedded into the apps millions of people use every single day, are the foundational pieces that help set Copilot apart and enable us to deliver an experience that unleashes creativity, unlocks productivity, and up-levels skills. So through that, with unleashing creativity, Copilot for Microsoft 365 works alongside you in the apps that you use every day, learning how you work to help you tap into which apps are fully capable of. Copilot will jumpstart the creative process, so you never have to start with a blank slate again. If you've ever stared at a blank page wondering how to begin a document, that experience is now over. Copilot will jumpstart the creative process, so you never start with that blank slate, and you've then kind of got the help you need to create the professional looking documents with ease. Copilot can help you write faster and better by suggesting relevant content, formatting, and design options based on your topic, maybe the audience, and even purpose. You can use Copilot to generate summaries, outlines, and captions for your documents, as well as check for grammar, spelling, and readability issues. With Copilot in Word, to help jumpstart the creative process so you never start with that blank slate, helping you write, edit, summarize, and create right alongside you. For the example of PowerPoint, you can bring your ideas to life. You can transform existing written documents into decks, completed with speaker notes and sources. You can even start a new presentation on a simple prompt or outline, all with ease of natural language commands. And if you're using Copilot in Excel, you can analyze trends, create professional looking data visualizations in seconds, generate models based on your questions that help you exploit data without modifying it. Now, if we move to unlocking productivity, this will help by summarizing actions and conversations for you. Copilot for Microsoft 365 can help you optimize your time and act as a productivity booster. If you've ever stared at that blank page, wondering how to begin a document, again, it's going to help kind of jumpstart that creative process. Helping you manage your projects and tasks efficiently, Copilot can help you keep track of your projects and tasks by creating and updating project plans, assigning and delegating responsibilities, and even monitoring progress and deadlines. You can use Copilot to collaborate with your team members, communicate updates and feedback, even generate reports and insights. So the examples of Copilot in Outlook helps you clear your inbox in minutes, not hours or days. How many of you came back from maybe the holiday break of the festive period you've just had and your inbox was as long as your arm? Copilot's going to help lighten that load from summarizing long email threads to quickly drafting suggested replies. Copilot and Teams can summarize key discussion points, including who said what and where people are aligned and where they disagree, and suggest action items all in real time during a meeting. If you're using Copilot in Loop, you can use this to build on each other's ideas collaboratively, and everyone can see from the prompt history how it's arrived to the current state with the option of undoing the instruction. Finally, with Microsoft 365 Chat.
Introducing Microsoft 365 Chat, a powerful new capability in Microsoft 365 to solve your most complex problems at work. Let's say you're a marketer at a national chain of home improvement stores, and you need to get the latest on the store opening. You start your day with Copilot, asking what's hot in your inbox today. It does some thinking and gives you an overview of the most pressing items. Great. Looks like the new store opening plans could use your attention. Let's dive in deeper there. Copilot combs through all your recent emails, chats, documents, and meetings, whether you attended them or not, to get you up to speed in moments. It didn't just summarize a single document. It knew what sources to pull from and what information to extract from each. Next, you need to do some market research. Let's say you want details on square footage and the proximity of competitors to your new location. M365 Chat scours the web, and within seconds, it finds everything you're looking for. And it includes references, so you can easily fact-check the results. You're curious, how does this stack up against the other stores you're opening in the past year? Copilot figures out which stores you mean, crunches the numbers, and gives you the answer. Next on your to-do list, finalize the date and speaker for the opening event. You missed the last meeting, and this might have come up in the conversation. Copilot's got you covered, getting you up to speed in seconds. Looks like it was a dynamic discussion, and it's your responsibility to make a final decision. To do that, you need to understand all the factors at play, including the implications they have on your grand opening timeline. Copilot extracts the relevant details and puts them in an organized table, which helps bring the full picture into view. You're not seeing a clear answer, so you ask it to recommend the best date and speaker based on the constraints discussed. It not only understands the constraints, it thinks through the options to help solve your problem. There you go. Now you have a clear recommendation, so you can make the call and notify the team. Now that you've got the opening date, you've got to get customers excited. Time to write a blog post. You point Copilot to the right files and ask it to tune the message to the audience. Note the amount of detail, such as asking it to pick the top 5 things and make them prominent. Here it goes. Copilot gets to work. Okay, now you've got a blog post. This store will be the first to unveil your new home improvement concierge service, and you need a catchy tagline. Let's generate some options. This is great for when you've got a case of writer's block. Here we go. These look pretty good. Lastly, you want to highlight the impressive retail experience of the new store manager. Best source for that? LinkedIn. Copilot generates an updated blog for you that includes the new additions. Now, the opening is just around the corner, and you've got to send an email to the team so they have everything they need to push this over the finish line. Now, one of the amazing things about Copilot is you don't need to worry about things like punctuation, spelling, or being super structured. You can give it a total brain dump. You could spend the next hour putting together an email that outlines the key details, but with Copilot, you're never more than a few seconds away from a solid first draft. There was a great quote in the store walkthrough video that you want to include, but you don't remember where you last saw it or have time to search for it, let alone re-watch it to find the quote. Based on your quick description, Copilot finds the exact video you're thinking of, extracts the quote you wanted, and plugs both the quote and the video into your email. So, you like the draft, but it doesn't sound like you. Introducing Sound Like Me in Outlook. Now you can personalize any email to match your unique style and voice. And check this out. It even knows your signature. M365 Chat is a whole new way to work.
So with that, probably slightly longer than a quicker video, but however, really like Microsoft 365 Chat, the new hero experience for Copilot for Microsoft 365. This goes far beyond simple questions and answers. As we've just seen, it combs the entire universe of data, being all of your emails, meetings, chats, documents, and more, plus the web, to solve the most complex problems at work. Like an assistant, it has a deep understanding of the users, their jobs, their priorities, and their organizations. It can find whatever users need in their files, even if the files they forgot existed. Connect the dots across all content and context at the speed of light, and even integrate with the apps that they use to run their business. So we've talked about productivity and the promise of Copilot for Microsoft 365. Wondering, if you have a little thought within yourself, are you feeling excited for the AI, or do you feel like it's still too far away, unattainable, or unrealistic for your organization? Now, with this table on the screen right now, this underscores the value that comes into Copilot and Copilot with commercial data protection, which offers a clearer picture of the value of Microsoft 365, as well as the unique value offered by Copilot with Microsoft 365. And with this, I hope you're excited as we are around Copilot and the possibilities it offers. So Copilot became, and this is where we have to be a little bit careful because Copilot was renamed from Bing Chat Enterprise. So Copilot for the web was made generally available as of December 1st, 2023 at no additional cost. Those Microsoft 365 E3, E5, A3 and A5 for faculty, which is education licenses, and business standard and business premium, and availability on F3, so frontline worker SKUs, became available as of December 1st as well. Over time, Microsoft's vision is to expand Copilot to any Entra ID user at no additional cost. So wherever and whenever an employee signs into Copilot with their work account, they'll get commercial data protection. And with that, it's kind of the commercial data protection you're seeing is restricted to the web kind of thing on this version of Copilot, which we're seeing. So the next steps, Alex, I'd probably say, before we move into demonstration, we want to ensure that you have the guidance you'd need to start using Copilot at your organization today. The first step that we'd recommend is to download the adoption kit with the communications, templates, and training resources for end users to learn more about the use of Copilot and kind of the documentation, but really get started with kind of the Copilot with commercial data protection through bing.com/chat and sign in with your Entra ID. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Alex, who's going to bring us in for a demo portion.
Thanks very much, Mike. Okay, so let's get started. So for me, I'm going to take you through my view on Microsoft 365 Copilot, so the elements that I'm finding most interesting, most useful, most beneficial, I guess, for the time being. And for me, I always like to start my day with Microsoft 365 Chat. So we, in a similar vein to the videos, the explanation that Mike's just gone through, Microsoft 365 Chat is very much there as a personal assistant almost, so I can ask it questions. It gives me answers to those and helps sort of shorten the time it takes for me to get those answers. So something as simplistic as understanding when my next meeting is with someone. So Mike and I, we work quite closely together. I have to put in Michael. It doesn't understand Mike, unfortunately, at the moment. Sorry, Mike. But if we sort of start with something simplistic, so asking Copilot when's my next meeting with Mike Markey, it will go through my calendar, it'll go through Mike's calendar, assuming I've got access to that, and it will come back with a sort of cohesive response. So we'll just give it a couple of moments to sort of trawl through that data. May also be that I've left this for a little while with my sort of demo screen. So what I'm going to do is just reload that page quickly. We'll pose that question again. So now we can see it starting to do something. So it's coming back to say it's starting to trawl that content. In this particular circumstance, it can't find any information about next meetings I have with Mike, which would suggest that Mike, we probably don't have one scheduled after today. So what I'll do is we'll just sort of turn this around and ask a slightly different question. So I'll go with someone that I know I definitely have a session aligned with. So when is my next meeting with Paul Stevens, who happens to be my line manager? So we'll just go through that context so you can see the type of response it gives. I mean, for me, the most interesting piece is typically not only does it give me the response to the question I've asked, it also gives me the sort of reference point so I can highlight over this, and it lets me know that this is the meeting invite that I did have scheduled with Paul. In this particular circumstance, I've declined that invite, so perhaps not one that I'll be joining, but just starts to show the sort of light touch value that it can bring. So if we sort of jump forward, we're going to pose a question sort of similar to one of the ones we went through in the videos, more focused around using the capability to generate an output for us. So we're going to ask it to put a blog post together based on a PowerPoint. So in Microsoft 365 chat and a lot of the sort of Copilot capabilities, we can do a sort of hash and it will start trawling through our data so we can reference files. So if I look at what do we want here, sort of Microsoft 365 Copilot customer scenario library. So if we jump into that and hit go, it's going to sort of trawl through the data that sits within that PowerPoint deck, and it will start to draw out a blog post for us. So we'll just give this a couple of moments to do its work. And here we can see it's starting to write out the sort of blog post that I've asked it to do. And we can do this in many other areas as well. So we can do this in Outlook, we can do it in Word, so it doesn't have to be specific to sort of Microsoft 365 chat. And again, we can then start to build on top of that. So we can say, maybe something like, can you rewrite this for a legal sector audience? And again, it will then go away and it will tailor the output specific to the legal sector. Yeah, so let's take a slightly different tack. So one of the other areas I find really useful in Copilot is the ability to summarize content. So this is just one particular email. It's a sort of news feed I subscribe to. It's sort of reasonably lengthy. Sometimes it can take quite a while to sort of digest, understand, even to recognize what the key points are within these documents or these emails that we receive. So we've got an option right at the top here for summary by Copilot. And what it will do is digest the information for me. It'll examine the key points and then it will return those for me. So it makes it much quicker to digest that information. So it's just going through creating the summary for me quickly now. So we'll be able to see that in a moment. Sometimes it can take a little while to return results. It's not maybe not quite as smooth as is illustrated in the videos we see from Microsoft sometimes, but I guess it does depend, what data it's sort of having to analyze to return the response. What we'll do, just because we're sort of time conscious at the moment, when we've got a number of demos to go through, we'll jump forward and we'll pop back to this one just so we can see the result in a little while. So what I also wanted to show is how we can start using Microsoft 365 Copilot to coach us in terms of not necessarily getting it to generate an output for us, but maybe to examine an output that we've given it to sort of start suggesting or supporting that educational experience. So again, if I sort of paste in, just for ease, quick questions, so an email I'm starting to write to Mike, we've got a couple of options at the top here in terms of Copilot. We've got draft capabilities, we've also got coaching. So if we start with coaching, for example, this will analyze the email, it will review how I've written it, and typically it will suggest ways I can improve or tailor. So I've written emails before where it's had a number of different bullet points, for example, which Copilot sees as being quite brash. So it recommends different ways you can articulate points to make it maybe a slightly softer email. We're doing well from a demo perspective today. Copilot seems to be on a little bit of a go slow at the moment. Leave that to run. Let me just open. No, it is wanting to play. So here we've got sort of very simplistic. You could be a little bit more friendly. It sounds too formal, and maybe a little bit impersonal for a message to one of your colleagues, and maybe start with "Hello, Mike," or something different to start softening the messaging and how it comes across to the reader on the other end. Equally, we can then sort of turn this round and look at how we can ask Copilot to help us draft a different version of this. So we've got a number of different options. So maybe we'll look at making it a very formal response, and we'll want to keep it sort of short and concise. So we'll go through generating a draft quickly, just so you can see the sort of difference, the type of information or the sort of type of response it articulates. So I know in one of the sort of videos we've just seen, it talked about the ability to make it sound like you. That's not quite available in terms of the capability we have in the private preview. So definitely looking forward to that coming to life, and sort of getting to grips with that and being able to articulate messages in sort of my own language, I guess. But yeah, what we can see here is this is how the Copilot service has interpreted my email, how it's broadened that to maybe make it a little bit more formalized in terms of the ask I'm putting forward to so Mike in this context. I've got options to regenerate that draft if I'm not happy with. Equally, I can keep that draft, it writes it into my email, and then I can start sort of customizing, tailoring, and sort of tweaking that to make sure it's sort of fit for purpose and where I would expect it to be. So the next element that I find really useful is the sort of in-meeting experience where we're looking at Teams. So what I'm going to do is just bring across my sort of live window for today's session, and everything I'm showing you here we can also do from a recap perspective. So if you've gone through a session that's had the transcription enabled, or it's been recorded, again, you can go back into the history of that session and interact with Copilot in the same way that we're going to do here. So something as simplistic as asking Copilot to summarize the sort of main ideas that have been discussed. So obviously we're going through a live session at the moment. We've got the transcription enabled, so the service in the background is recording everything that the speakers are saying. And what Copilot does is it will interrogate, analyze the transcript to give me some information to help with that in-meeting experience. So in this sort of particular circumstance, it's identified a couple of key areas, and what I really liked, and I've mentioned this in the sort of Microsoft 365 chat piece, but it does give reference points back into the transcript, so I can sort of pinpoint exactly where in the transcript that element of the conversation was. So it means I can then go into the transcript if I need to and look at the sort of context around that. Equally, Copilot's also intelligent enough to start recommending certain questions that I could ask it. So do we want to recap the meeting? Do I want to see the sort of action items that have been generated? We also have this notion of more prompts in all the different Microsoft 365 Copilot capabilities, where Copilot will suggest, what you could ask it. And I guess this talks to the value of the sort of driving user adoption and awareness of how we need to interact with Copilot to get the best out of it. For me, I guess it's been very much baptism of fire. There hasn't been a massive amount of context around what we can ask, how to get the best out of it, because it is part of that preview program. But something we'll step through in a moment is how we would definitely recommend driving that user workforce adoption piece, so that when you do adopt Copilot within your own organizations, within your customers' organizations, you're able to sort of hit the ground running and get the best sort of value back from the service versus the money that you're spending out to utilize it. So one other thing that I do find quite useful in the sort of in-meeting experience, again, is asking questions such as, what follow-up questions would you recommend Copilot that we could perhaps raise to the presenters, the speakers within this particular session to help guide, advise, or leverage additional content. So again, we'll go through, we'll trawl the transcript, and it throws out a couple of different questions that may be interesting to speak through. So something such as best practices and tips for using Microsoft 365 chat. How can we get the best out of summary for Copilot? What does that coaching experience look like? And equally, how does the in-meeting experience look? So again, it just sort of starts to suggest pointers that can sort of bring me back into a session. So maybe it's a topic I'm not overly confident with, and this can help sort of drive that confidence level. Equally, if there's something I'm not sure on, I can say to Copilot, can you help me understand this sort of concept in a different manner, which is sort of very useful as we're going through that in-meeting experience. So let me just dock that back over there. And we're going to jump into Microsoft Word quickly. So let me bring that up. So with Word, we get the concept of drafting. Again, sort of similar to how we use other elements. And again, I'm just going to paste in some content just to save me typing it out. But the context here is I've got a blank piece of paper, and I'm wanting to put together a partner-facing overview of our readiness program for AI. So I've typed that in. This is the question I want to ask, and what I'm also going to do is reference a particular file. So again, I can do a sort of /. I'm going to look at the demo content for our foundational service for AI readiness. If we hit generate, Copilot will then go away. It will digest the content that sits within that sort of PowerPoint presentation that I'm referencing, and it will start to write out the partner-facing guidance as per my ask. So we'll give it a moment to go through, and we'll then look at how we can sort of customize and tailor the output that we get. So again, sort of talking to one of Mike's points earlier, where if you've got writer's block, you're staring at a blank piece of paper, you can use Copilot to sort of give you a start point, definitely. So if we we want to keep this, for example, there's a number of different elements that it's spat out. So these particular elements are the key points of our sort of readiness program. We'll be going through those in a moment, and we've got a couple of different options where we can look at, can we rewrite this with Copilot or articulating it in a different way? But equally, in some circumstances, can you visualize this as a table so it's slightly easier to read, for example? So we'll just sort of look at that revisualization piece. So it keeps the old and the new content, so we can play the two off against each other. We can determine what we want to keep. And this is then the second take on that. And I've then got a decision point. Do I prefer what's articulated in bullets, or do I take the table piece forward. And again, the sort of Copilot capability is consistent across the sort of web versions of sort of Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and the sort of fact client, should we call it, the traditional installed version. So we'll just jump to sort of Word Online so we can see some context here as well. So this is the Copilot Readiness blog I wrote a little while back, and something that's quite interesting is we can open a document, or we can have written a document, and we can start asking Copilot questions around this. So, for example, in this context, what challenges are presented in this document? Question mark. A little bit of a typo there. It's not a massive worry because Copilot is intelligent enough to sort of read around that, understand what I was trying to ask, and then it will sort of analyze the content and it will give me an output in terms of the sort of key points or key challenges that are presented in this sort of particular document. So we'll just give that a moment to go through, and then just one other element I want to show you in PowerPoint before we sort of jump forward from the live demo section. So here we go. So a summary of the document talks through some of the sort of main ideas that are being surfaced. And again, it gives us reference points so we can jump straight to those areas if we need to. And again, this is something I can sort of take in terms of, do I just use it as a tool to say, in my own mind, I've digested this, I've understand what challenges Copilot has recognized, I can go and augment what I've written based on that output. Equally, I can take that output and put it straight into my sort of written content. And then just one sort of final piece to show you, just from a sort of PowerPoint presentation perspective. So at least in my world, I spend a lot of time writing content, then I have to sort of turn that into a PowerPoint presentation, which can be sort of quite lengthy. So you've got the time to document, this is how we think the readiness process should work in this particular circumstance. So taking that Copilot readiness blog post, how do we then turn that into a presentation that we can talk to our partner community and customers about? And, again, it's that notion of looking at a blank page. Where do we start? So what we can do with PowerPoint is, again, we can reference files. So we can say things like, can you create me a presentation with speaker notes based on our Copilot Readiness blog? And if we do a slash, it's coming up with it here because I've tested this earlier today, but I could start typing to sort of trawl through the documents that I have access to. And we'll just leave it to go away. It'll take a couple of moments, but what it will do is we'll digest the content within that readiness document I've given it. It will generate a quick summary. This is what I've understood. This is what I'm going to build your slides about. So this is the sort of summary of the presentation that it's generating for me. It'll then start to draft the presentation, and then we will see that in its full glory. So we're sort of getting there, sort of generating the slides now. And again, once it does generate the output, it's something that we can fully customize, edit, we can rebrand, we can sort of ask it to do elements around different slides for us. But the value, I guess, that it brings is it's taking that notion of starting from a blank page and giving you context or content that you can work around. So just from a written set of words in Microsoft Word around Copilot and the value of readiness, we've got a top-down PowerPoint presentation. Yes, it's perhaps not as graphically pleasing as I would like it to be. So there's work to do in terms of how it's articulated, but it gives us a great foundation in terms of rationalizing that content and some ideas or thought-provoking ideas for how we can take that and drive forward. So that sort of concludes what we want to show from a demo perspective. Very open to questions, thoughts as we close out this session. So we're just going to jump back to slides now. So we've done sort of bringing Copilot to life. Hopefully that was useful and of interest to you all. So we now want to just take a little bit of time to talk you through the sort of preparation process for Microsoft 365 Copilot, and I'll sort of hand back off to Mike to go through some of the technology-focused specifics. So for us, at least at Ingram Micro, we've developed our sort of foundational services for AI readiness. And when we look at Microsoft 365 Copilot specifically, there are sort of 5 fundamental building blocks that we ideally would recommend that each of our partners and customers goes through. And we can distill this down to 3 sort of core areas. So there's the sort of initial commercial readiness, commercial value proposition. So we see this as an AI use case and total cost of ownership workshop, which is very much around understanding how commercially viable an implementation of Microsoft 365 Copilot would be within your business. We've then got the notion of technology readiness, which is points 2 through to 4, which is where we'll support through understanding how your environment looks today in terms of your Microsoft 365 footprint. Where does it sit in terms of readiness for Microsoft 365 Copilot? And then building on top of that, how can we drive readiness for your data so that it is what we would call Copilot ready? And then also, how can we look at protecting that business data, the sensitive data that we're making ready for Copilot, so that when Copilot does drop, it's in a very safe, secure and controlled manner. And then sort of rounding out in terms of the business or workforce adoption side of things. And now that we've validated from a commercial perspective, we've gone through the technical guardrails and everything's in place, the data's secure, we're ready to go. How can we drive the sort of best benefit, best value with sort of the adoption of Microsoft 365 Copilot? So we'll just sort of step through these very quickly, sort of mindful that we're sort of running short on time and Mike's got a couple of elements to cover off. So just in terms of the sort of total cost of ownership, commercial viability piece, what we're sort of keen on, I guess, in this scenario or this sort of start point is looking at the high impact areas. So within your business or your customers' businesses, where are the sort of key areas that Copilot or Microsoft 365 Copilot would be beneficial? So where does that sort of highest impact point sit? We'll then look at, take a finance controller, for example. That might be the high impact scenario we're looking at. We'll then work with individual businesses to determine, from a task-driven perspective, how long does it take to do tasks A, B, and C, and how much does it cost the business for those particular resources to go through that exercise? We'll then go through a mapping exercise where we can say, well, actually, Microsoft 365 Copilot could be leveraged to sort of save time in this area, and this area. We'll then pull that together. We'll analyze it across the cost of implementing Microsoft 365 Copilots. We'll look at the licensing breakdown on costs, and we'll then do the modeling in terms of the total cost of ownership, which helps from that sort of commercial viability standpoint. So based on the high impact use cases we've looked at, the time and the cost associated with those versus how much Microsoft 365 Copilot will cost, how viable is it to sort of drive forward with that transition and adoption of Copilot? So that's very much stage 1 for us. Stage 2 is all around getting ready. So a number of prerequisites. I'm not going to talk through all of these. I think the key ones to mention are the sort of licensing piece. So it's very well publicized around sort of the Microsoft 365 A3, E3, E3, and A5, that should be, and E5 license SKUs as sort of prerequisites. There's sort of very well documented capabilities in Microsoft's blogs around the business premium, business standard licenses when Copilot does come into sort of general availability, sort of outside enterprise agreements. So that's something that we're sort of very well aware of, something that will come in the future. Whether additional licenses are added in terms of the prerequisite requirements at this stage, we just don't know. So obviously there's sort of broader Office 365 license SKUs. There's a lot of standalone licenses out there as well. So we're in a very similar position where we're waiting and watching, as you guys will be, to understand how that landscape will change as Microsoft bring different announcements forward. But then sort of from our side, it's how can we support driving the validation of those prerequisites. So we'll look at the sort of top-down core capabilities. So do you meet the sort of core technical requirements? What we'll also do is we'll help understand or help digest within our end customers' organizations where they sit from a readiness perspective. So we'll look at your security posture, we'll look at your compliance posture, we'll look at your data repositories to understand where your data sits, we'll look at shadow IT infrastructure. So all these sort of key components that are sort of very important when it comes to sort of Microsoft 365 in general, but arguably more important when we're looking at Copilot, more because we're putting in a tool that can highlight a lot of not inefficiencies, but I guess discrepancies in how Microsoft 365 environments are configured at the moment. So one sort of very simplistic example is, maybe there's an employee within the business, and maybe the MD, for example, who downloads his bank statements every month and stores them in OneDrive. He may squirrel those away in a number of different folders, which to any normal person, even if they've got access to that content, it would take, a lot of time and effort to trawl through a folder structure to find these bank statements to determine how much money your managing director earns, for example. When we're looking at Microsoft 365 Copilot, we've got the notion of Microsoft 365 chat. We can ask a very simplistic question, which could be, how much money did my MD earn last month? And if his content is available, it's not protected in the right fashion, anyone that has access to that data, Microsoft 365 Copilot can use the individual user's sort of security footprint to go and access that data too. So it gives us a very quick way to pull that content back. So it's a very crude example, I guess, of highlighting the benefits or the importance of taking the time to go through and analyze your data, your compliance, your security postures, so we can make sure that much as Microsoft 365 Copilot is really beneficial, it does a very good job, and it does also highlight those inefficiencies or misconfigurations. So something that we're very mindful of as we go through this sort of readiness journey. So for us, we'll take businesses through that, or recommend you go through something like that and generate a sort of scorecard, should we call it, to help you understand within your business where you sit from a readiness perspective. We then drive forward with the notion of then how can we align your organization, your configuration from a content management best practice perspective, so looking at the data readiness angle, but equally how can we ensure that the appropriate security, privacy and governance controls are in place. That means when we put Microsoft 365 Copilot in place, the right guardrails are in place and the user experience will return very much in line with our expectations. And then just to close out before I hand back off into Mike, we then also got the notion of end user adoption. So one thing we're very mindful of, and particularly for myself, having gone through baptism of fire when it comes to Copilot, understanding and learning what I can do to get the best out of the tool, is then how we can look at the workforce. We've gone through the commercial analysis, we've gone through the technical analysis. Let's then focus on the workforce so we can make sure that they're equally ready, they're armed, they have the knowledge that they can then use to sort of drive these tools forward. So just for me, just want to close out with, don't get me wrong, you could enable a Microsoft 365 Copilot license. You don't have to go through this sort of structured approach. For us, there's definitely a lot of value in that. Hopefully that's sort of starting to come across in the demos and the elements that we're talking through, more from a security, governance and compliance perspective, because it does highlight a different way we can access content that we already have access to today. And with that, I'm just going to hand back off to Mike to take us through some of the inner workings.
Thanks, Alex. So yeah, if we move on the next slide, across the inner workings of Microsoft 365 Copilot. So Before I jump in, the topic I'm hearing most is data protection, security, and privacy. And with that, Microsoft have built these principles directly into the Copilot orchestration. Your data is your data to kind of own and control. Microsoft doesn't use your data to train the large language model. And your data is protected by the most comprehensive enterprise security and compliance controls. Now, throughout today's session, if we move on to the next one, Alex. So throughout today's session and other sessions previous to this, we've spoken about the comprehensive approach that Microsoft has and will always take as the foundational principle. And this is no different with the inclusion of AI. Through the secure zero trust approach and ever ensuring device compliance baseline, and through the protections of information privacy and data security. This is ensuring that throughout the use of the tenant, the numerous groups running within that tenant, and even down to you as the individual who could be on your laptop or device hundreds of miles away from the office, there are the relevant permission models in place to protect data at all levels of the organization. Now, wrap around and add on the responsible AI that we've just spoken about, and not only is your work data as secure as can be throughout the configurations you might have that Microsoft have set out, you've now also got another tool that is working alongside for you, and even in some cases, it's kind of helping being guided by its own core set of principles. Now, to actually know how Copilot for Microsoft 365 works, I've built out a lovely graphic, if you like. So Copilot receives an input prompt from a user in an app like Word or PowerPoint. Copilot will then pre-process the prompt through an approach called grounding, which improves the specificity of the prompt, ensuring that you get the answers that are relevant and actionable to your specific task, like we've just seen within what Alex was doing before. It does this in part by making a call to the Microsoft Graph, so your information within your tenant, which we'll explain a little bit further, and accessing your organization's data. And that data used by Copilot for an authenticated user is scoped to the documents and data that are already visible to them through existing Microsoft 365 role-based access controls. So back to Enter ID. If your name's not down, you're not coming in. It's kind of digital man on the door. This retrieval of information is referred to as retrieval augmented generation, and it allows Copilot to provide exactly the right type of information as input to a large language model. Combining this user data with other inputs, such as the information retrieved from knowledge-based articles to improve the prompt, Copilot takes the response from the large language model and post-processes it. This post-processing includes additional grounding calls to Microsoft Graph, responsible AI checks, security, compliance, and privacy reviews, and even command generation. Copilot will then return a recommended response to the user, as we saw with, in particular, the coaching example through Outlook. So it will return that recommended response and commands back to the apps where a user can review and assess the suggested response. Copilot iteratively processes and orchestrates these sophisticated services to produce results that are relevant to your business because they're contextually based on your organization's data. Now, if we talk briefly about the core components that you heard a couple of times in that previous slide, the Microsoft Graph. So the Microsoft Graph provides a unified programmability model to access your data and intelligence in Microsoft 365. Simply put, it's your data. One of the ways Copilot can access the knowledge in the graph via Microsoft Search, which provides personalized search results and insights. If you've ever searched for an email in Outlook or look for a file in SharePoint, you've used Microsoft Search. Microsoft are constantly investing in improving Microsoft Search's ability to provide insights, ranking, and relevance across your data, and all of the improvements that Microsoft are making with Microsoft Search accrue to Copilot. The key is you control what users have access to in Copilot with the existing Microsoft Search and access controls that Alex talked about with the information privacy just before. Now, because this is built on Microsoft Search, in addition to access controls, you can also extend the grounding data Copilot has access to via the Microsoft Graph connectors. Now, Copilot leverages these three components, the Microsoft Graph, which provides the data, Microsoft Search, which provides the search over this data, and also something called the semantic fabric, which enhances the search relevance by providing a semantic representation of the data. And these components are all used in a technique called retrieval augmented generation. Now, with retrieval augmented generation, it's Copilot leveraging your data using this technique. And since Microsoft don't train the large language model on your data, the Copilot orchestrator retrieves the right content from the Microsoft Graph and appends the relevant content to a unified prompt to give the large language model the information it needs to generate that response. But because prompt sizes are limited and can't reason over all of your tenant data, getting the right data from the graph is critical, which is why semantic understanding is so important. So with chat history for context, the large language model is stateless and doesn't learn from your data. Chat history provides the context to have a conversational experience and remember what you were chatting about. These are stored as messages and with the same controls and security as any data in Microsoft 365, including GDPR, data sovereignty, e-discovery, auditing purposes, etc. The final piece is the most important for consistent and responsible responses, kind of around the default prompt, giving Copilot responsible rules for interaction, things such as where to search, the style and tone, how it should answer questions, even how to cite sources, and most importantly, rules for ensuring it acts responsibly and doesn't create harmful content. The user prompt, grounding data, chat history, and system prompt are all getting added to one large prompt, and this is what we actually send to the large language model to give it enough information to answer your question. So it can do even more than just give you your chat responses when you're in a particular app like Word or PowerPoint or Outlook. Microsoft's orchestration engine is capable of being more sophisticated to execute commands and help you get things done. Now, natural language processing, NLP for short, is a field of computer science that focuses on the interaction between computers and humans in a natural language. In recent years, there's been a surge of interest in pre-trained language models, some of those you've heard of already, such as BERT, GPT, and sequence-to-sequence transformer. These models are first pre-trained on large collections of text documents to acquire general knowledge and semantic information, and then they're fine-tuned for specific tasks, which they can often solve with superhuman accuracy. When the models are large enough, they can be instructed by prompts to solve new tasks without the need of fine-tuning. Moreover, they can be applied to a wider range of different media and problem domains, ranging from image and video processing to robot-controlled learning, because they provide a blueprint for solving many tasks in artificial intelligence, and these are being called the foundational models. Whichever prompts are entered, they're not used to train the AI model for Copilot, as the model has already been trained and fine-tuned. Now, the semantic index for Copilot, referenced it a couple of slides ago, but this is a sophisticated map of your user and company data. For example, when you ask it about the March sales report, it doesn't simply look for documents with those words in the file name or the body. Instead, it's understanding that sales reports are produced by Kelly on the finance team and created in Excel, and it uses that conceptual understanding to determine your intent and help you find what you need. Semantic index for Copilot is critical to getting relevant, actionable responses to prompts in Microsoft Copilot. And it enhances the search results across Microsoft 365 customers, whether they're using Copilot or not. Now, Microsoft are in the early stages of rolling out the semantic index to all organizations within an eligible Microsoft 365 SKU without any administrative involvement. Microsoft automatically manages the enablement of the semantic index with prioritization given for organizations that are purchasing more than 300 licenses for Microsoft 365 Copilot, just based on the pure computing power that's needed for the semantic index. When the user indexing is completed, administrators will see a semantic indexing as complete status in the admin center for enabled users. And when tenant level indexing starts in the organizations, admins will see semantic index is available for your organization and on the search or intelligence page in the admin center itself. There are no published timelines or status of semantic indexing, but yeah, just advised to check on that status itself. Another element of foundational productivity is semantic index for Copilot, a critical part of the Copilot system, which will be rolling out to the Microsoft 365 customers worldwide later this calendar year. With semantic index for Copilot, there is a set of AI tools to understand the relationships between different words and phrases specific to your organization. The resulting index on top of the Microsoft Graph allows Copilot to search through billions of vectors and return the most related results in tens of milliseconds. Semantic indexing for Copilot is able to understand your intent behind your prompts and commands, which will help produce more relevant and transparent results. With that, we're walking through the example of the differences between a standard search from Microsoft 365 and which is available with the semantic index for Copilot and Copilot for Microsoft 365. And in the scenario, the user has misspelled a request to find information on the Project Melbourne ship room. On the left-hand side, we've got the experience of all Microsoft 365 users are familiar with using keyword matching and the Microsoft Graph. The results attempt to predict what you're searching for and provide the closest match possible. And in the example, the intent hasn't been captured. However, what we do find is links to adjacent content that we can interact with that may lead us to what we're searching for. We also see these documents when they were last updated, by whom, and the start of the document summary to help us decide whether we want to click on it or not. Contrast to this, the semantic index for Copilot's results on the right, our misspelled word has been recognized as organizational jargon and is auto-corrected to provide a better starting search without having to retype the query. The result shows that the most relevant paragraph in the most relevant document to your query about Project Melbourne without the needing to open up the document, reducing the effort to find what you need. The semantic index for Copilot is providing you with the latest ship room deck available to give you the most up-to-date information, all at your fingertips, without the need to specify that you're looking for the most recent document. Sharing the insights has been enhanced to show if you have interacted with any of the content in the results previously, and even to help you learn more about your query. As Microsoft are providing AI-generated questions and answers in a single search pane, which can help you think differently about the topic and help you reduce the amount of interaction that you're going to actually have to need to find that answer that you're looking for. And Microsoft 365 and the graph with the semantic indexing for Copilot is helping you enable the unprecedented expressiveness for search, chat, and Copilot, leveraging Microsoft 365 data. This expressiveness is foundational to surface the right grounding data to get the most out of Copilot for Microsoft 365 with your organizational data. Now, the last piece on semantic indexing, if we just go to the next slide, Alex. So semantic index for Copilot consists of 5 features. You've got organizational terms, document excerpts, semantic search, more context, and frequently asked questions. And these features enable you to interact with your data in new ways and help you find answers quickly. The organizational terms, these are uniquely positioned to auto-correct misspelled organizational jargon across the Microsoft 365 without any administrative involvement. The document excerpts are extractive information answers to a query that attempt to convey all of your important parts of the query in the most relevant paragraph in the most relevant document. The semantic search captures the semantic meaning of that query, such that semantically similar text has similar numerical values to help better understand the language. And more context relies on the Microsoft Graph to provide collaboration, sharing, and content insights to kind of help those search results, giving you an indication of why you're seeing what you see to help you make better decisions about what the content is in which you want to interact with. Within the same search result, frequently asked questions provided AI-generated questions on a query to help you understand more about that query in a single search pane. And with that, I'm going to hand back to Alex, who's just out to close.
Thanks very much, Mike. So guys, hopefully that's been sort of informative and useful. I appreciate there's a number of comments around the availability of licenses. So I'm happy to stay around to answer a couple of questions if needed. I think the sort of guiding, the best guidance we can give from a licensing perspective is ultimately where we sit at the moment. We know as much as you know. So Microsoft have made it, I guess, very well known that at the moment Copilot is limited, or Microsoft 365 Copilot at least, is limited to enterprise agreement customers. There is a minimum commit of 300 seats for those enterprise agreement customers where they're looking to purchase Microsoft 365 Copilot, and there's also the sort of run rate prerequisites of Microsoft 365 A or E3 or A or E5 licenses as part of that agreement. Yes, we are expecting that landscape to change at some point this year. When that change will be announced, I'm afraid we just don't know at this point in time. Obviously, once we do know that, we will share it with our partner community.